Dave, do you guys go live to Instagram?
Occasionally, not often.
Okay.
Not often
Hey,
at all.
everybody, we're live. We are going to put a new link over into that last chat, I believe. My name is Clark. I can't explain technology, but I can tell you that we're a few minutes late. We have Dave Adamson from North Point Community Church in Atlanta, Haley Vituris from Bayside Church in Sacramento, all over California, and Justin Dean. He runs Sunday U, that church conference, and a lot more. As we get started here, you might have to scroll back a little bit. We're going to go and get started. I just want Dave, Haley, and Justin to give us a little bit of information, their background, what they're doing for their church, because what we're talking about today in this live Q&A is we're going to be listening to you, asking what you're struggling with, what you're dealing with when it comes to coronavirus, the pandemic. We want to actually unpack some of those things. So let's start with Justin, actually. So Justin Dean, tell us a little bit about what you do and how you're coming into this conversation, Justin.
Sure. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Sorry about all the technical difficulties if you've been waiting, but we're happy to help and share what we can here. My name is Justin Dean. I run a company called the Sunday Group here in Atlanta, Georgia, and we operate that church conference, which is an annual conference for church communicators that is still coming up in September. There's no plans yet to cancel that. I don't think that that's coming. But we also run a number of online membership sites, and our whole purpose really is just to help the church thrive from Sunday to Sunday with resources and content that can help you engage with your community, help you do Sundays better. And as we're learning through this pandemic, it's not all about Sunday morning. And so a lot of our resources have to do with engaging your people in the community throughout the week and not relying just on a building or just on Sunday morning. And so we've put out a number of resources already, a number of blog posts, content, and we're just trying to help as much as we can through this time.
Awesome. Dave in Atlanta, Georgia as well. Dave, tell us a little bit about what you do from North Point Ministries.
Hey, everybody. So I get to oversee anybody who connects with us on a digital perspective, especially when it comes to social media and YouTube, things like that. I'm part of a team that does an absolutely incredible job with leveraging technology to really help people connect with our church before they connect within our church. That's it.
All right, Haley.
Hey guys, I'm Haley Viteris. I am at Bayside Church in the Sacramento area, Northern California, and I'm the director of digital engagement there. And basically, what Dave said, connecting off-site before we get them on-site. This weekend, I happen to be out of town during the most important weekend for my position, so we're so grateful to have technology to be able to still connect with each other and to make things happen. And we had an awesome team that just came together and scrapped it up and made it happen and made it work.
Awesome. Can we start with, as we have some conversations join in here, if you're live on YouTube, you can watch the conversations to your right. We'd love for you to ask your questions, share some ideas with us, and we'll ask you some questions like that. But I want to ask in particular, what did Bayside do this past Sunday, and what did North Point do this past Sunday? I'll let either of you jump in. There, in my message I posted today, I watched my church try to figure it out on the fly, and they thought they were going to have service, and then Georgia declared a state of emergency, and it was just like, juggling, I don't know, the biggest jars of glass. That's the best way I can describe it. Just incredibly hard to do. You like that, Dave? What was it like? You guys work for larger churches, particularly Dave and Haley. What was it like behind the scenes, as we call BTS? What was it like behind the scenes? Go, Haley.
So earlier this week, we had an idea that California was kind of going to potentially, this was coming for us really quickly, since we're one of the top 3 states with the most reported cases. So we were planning to stream all 7 locations live online, which previously we had only done our main broadcast location on Facebook Live even. So we don't even have an online campus, because Bayside is very much about filling the room and being inside the room on site. We also have live teaching pastors at every single location that are all preaching the same weekend series and sermon, but different live teaching. And so we really value each campus being unique and representing its city and its community. So we knew that the broadcasting just one campus wasn't going to last very long, and I was already doing the work to launch a single online campus. But this week, Pastor Ray, our senior pastor, messaged our production team and wanted every single campus to also be live online and in person. Well, all that was good to go when I went out of town Wednesday night, and then Thursday morning we found out from the state that gatherings over 150 or more were shut down. So that forced us to all go online and rethink our entire strategy. So instead of being a single church with one online campus, we are a single Bayside church with 7 online campuses from each location. Even the guys at Life Church, because we use their platform, which is an excellent platform, and I recommend using it to anyone out there who's looking for a good free resource. They're like, you don't know of any churches that have 7 online church campuses. So I think we're moving away from the strategy of just one online church presence with one online pastor to all online church campuses with the regular pastors that pastor those campuses live and in person as well. And so the important thing for us is making sure the strategy is not just reactionary and in the moment, but will also be sustainable moving forward.
Haley, can you describe some of the big problems that you guys face, some of the big hurdles, like speak specifically to problems? What were the tensions, the struggles, the frustrations?
I mean, for me personally, I've been asking for a lot of these resources for a long time. And then overnight, it seemed like we got them. And so my boss is like, no, we got them. So it's really great. I'm like, it is great, but it's frustrating that it took a virus that's killing people for this to happen and for people to catch the vision of reaching more people beyond the 4 walls of your church on a weekend. So I'm glad people have the vision now and realize the importance of it, but it just seemed very reactionary to me. So our production team was working hard to get a solution in place for this weekend for every campus to be able to stream live with minimal equipment. I think they have very high standards, which we're really happy that they do, but they were going to make it happen at a lesser scale. But now we're like building out spaces that were just kind of there for in-house gatherings to produce more content for online, which we've been asking for a long time. We're like, we don't have a single studio at Bayside to film projects. We travel all the time. I film a show, The Flip Side, and it's been in 3 different locations, which we have to manually set up and tear down every week. So I am really glad that we are now investing in these resources. I just wish we would have had the foresight to do it sooner.
Dave, tell us what it was like at North Point Thursday, Friday, Saturday, as you went into Sunday. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, obviously, like everybody else, we were trying to figure out what it might look like to close the doors of the church. And really, from a North Point perspective, we've been live streaming our services for quite a while now through our own online platform. So that side of things wasn't something new to us. What was new was not having anybody physically in the building during those live streams. So for us, that side of things wasn't really a concern. We've got a fantastic team who do all the technical side and who film it all, and they just moved into the area of strength because that's really the lane that they live in. So I think for us it was more about how do we communicate this? How do we communicate this in a way that doesn't make people even more anxious or more fearful during this time? So from that point of view, our pastor Andy Stanley said something. The way they introduced the live stream, I think, was it was just so insightful. He said, we are streaming our services live, not from a lack of faith, but as an expression of faith, because we want to love our neighbors by protecting our neighbors. And that idea, that concept, that way of approaching it really changed the game from that point of view. So from a technical point of view, we've been doing this for a while, and it really just came about from a marketing point of view. I know for me personally, I had friends across the US and even over in Australia asking how they could set up their smaller church for live streaming.
because they'd not done it before, and how do we get the resources and how do we make this happen? So for me personally, I was fielding a lot of calls, a lot of emails from people wondering how they can live stream for free. And so I was steering them, ironically, to YouTube Live in the same way that you guys are, to just stream their services live on YouTube. And so I know there are a lot of smaller churches who are able to do that. And I was able to create a resource on Friday that just gave a step-by-step guide for how people can actually stream their church services on YouTube.
So Justin, speaking of smaller churches, that's one of the big questions I think I've already seen here in this thread. What do we do for smaller churches? You tell us a little bit more about, you run a couple of groups on Facebook, and they are full of smaller to medium-sized churches. I'm part of a larger church. We have small campuses of about 300-400, and that brings its own complexities. But let's specifically talk. What are you hearing in your Facebook groups? What your ear is close to the ground. I'm sure you get all the notifications. I'm sure. What are you hearing when it comes to these smaller churches, say 250 to 800? I don't know, in that neighborhood.
I mean, it's really churches from 50 to 300, 400. They're all just freaking out right now. We're seeing, I am getting a ton of notifications from all the different groups and people emailing us, because these churches, like Haley said, like they've been asking for this stuff. They've been hearing everything that we've all been saying and putting out, and they know that, yeah, this was something they wanted. They put proposals together, and now suddenly the church has to do it because the government's forcing them to close or whatnot, or they are just making the decision to close. And so suddenly they're figuring out, okay, we don't have any of that equipment in place. We don't have a procedure in place. So what do we do? And honestly, what I'm telling them to do is grab their phone and go live. Like especially for the smaller churches, they don't need to be on stage with the full band and the lights like North Point has. Like North Point already had that set up and ready to go. Of course, that's easy for them to do. But for any church, grab your phone. The pastor can do it from his desk in his home office or on his couch. Like that I think, honestly, in the long run, or at least over these next 8 weeks, is going to be probably the preferred way to go anyway. Like people don't need to see the big production right now because they can't even go and experience that. But they do want hope. They do want to hear about Jesus. They do want to feel connected. And so do that from your couch. Do that from your home office. If you can incorporate worship in that somehow, go for it. Last year, our church, I go to a small church. It's about 250, 300 tops. And we don't currently live stream. This week was the first time they actually live stream like Sunday services. And only a few weeks ago did they even get cameras to be able to do that. But last year in Atlanta, we had a freak snowstorm and we had to close the church on that Sunday. And it was all of a sudden. And literally the pastor, he was like, I've already got a sermon ready to go. So he sat at his home office with his iPhone and he went live to our Facebook page. And then our worship pastor went live from his house in a separate feed even. And he just grabbed his guitar and him and his wife sang a few songs. And it was honestly the coolest thing ever. It was so intimate. It was just, it was keeping us in touch with them. No one had to miss anything. We got to experience everything. And we were still together as a church. And I think that's exactly what small churches or even large churches should be looking at, because this is really, I think it's going to be 6 to 8 weeks for most churches here where you can't go to your building and you're forced to do this. And you don't have time to buy that equipment and set up a whole big thing.
I want to ask a quick question in kind of regards to that. You just talked about the authenticity and the power of having that in your whether it's at a desk or in the house with a guitar and an iPhone. Talk to me about, especially the churches that don't have a big production. They don't have this huge set and cameras and streaming equipment, and they don't have all that stuff. Do you think that churches should pursue, especially if we're not going to be in a campus, in a building for a while, should churches pursue the more intimate setting rather than trying to replicate the stage on a Sunday?
Man, that gets into a really tough conversation, and that's definitely one that we should have. you know, I think through this time, we are going to see a shift in the church, a shift that's been coming for a long time, and now we're forced to jump into it. Dave wrote a post about this not too long ago, kind of foreshadowing this a bit. And I don't think even he realized like how the church actually needs to shift to adapt to these types of things. But I think, and I kind of hope that we pull out of this with a new perspective on how we do church, with less emphasis on the buildings, less emphasis on large gatherings, and more emphasis on community groups and being out in the community, meeting online and accepting that as gathering, but being able to still be the church and meet needs, do the sacraments together, things like that, being able to perform baptisms and communion and things like that. I think that can all be done, but this gives us an opportunity to actually be the church. Churches right now, they're not only scrambling to figure out how do we put out a service each Sunday online, but they're also figuring out, hey, there's real needs. Like there's people without toilet paper right now in our community. There's people, we have a limited supply of insulin. If Walgreens closes, I don't know what we'll do for my daughter. We'll have to just figure it out. There's people in real situations like that with real needs. The economy is going to take a huge hit. People are losing their jobs, or sales are slowing down. Restaurants are closing. Those people are going to need money. The church is in a position now to help with those needs or connect you with other people who are able to meet those needs.
I don't want to make light of this joke. It's an interesting conversation. It was funny about 6 weeks ago when I first heard it. Now it's like, whoa. I don't know what conference I was at or where I was or where I heard it online, but the amount of money the church spends on toilet paper was significantly more than the amount we spend online on digital media. I made that joke. You made that joke?
I have no idea who made that joke. Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty funny. Well, let's look at coming around here. That's interesting. Crazy day we're in right now. We have a couple of questions that are very specific. They're really great questions. They have to do with live stream, music rights, and what are we gonna do for Easter? And I want to ask Dave or Haley, do you have any specific insight into can you use what are the music restrictions on live streaming stuff? I believe Dave and Haley are still there.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay.
Definitely. Music is a question that I get asked about quite often when it comes to this sort of thing, because it is a bit of a gray area, and most churches think, hey, I've got a CCLI license, so therefore I can do whatever I need to do. But from a CCLI point of view, their web streaming is very specific to URLs that are owned by the church. That's where the CCLI covers that from a copyright point of view. For churches that are streaming to Facebook or to YouTube, they fall under Facebook or YouTube's copyright program at that point. And so the copyright thing shifts. And so you've heard stories probably of churches that have received copyright strikes from Facebook, or they get a copyright notification from YouTube. From a YouTube point of view, that's the one that I'm probably most across. The way that YouTube works is if you do a certain church's song, say you do a Phil Wickham song, Phil Wickham's record label has probably set up a trigger to go off on YouTube as soon as that song gets recognized by YouTube, which is within minutes, like even it's within seconds sometimes. And so what happens is the person who runs that YouTube channel will get a notification, an email saying that a copyright claim has been made, but that's not a copyright strike. It's just a copyright claim to say that if your church has monetized its YouTube channel, that money for that song doesn't go to the church, it goes to Phil Wickham in that instance. But the thing is 99.98% of churches don't monetize their YouTube channels anyway, so it's not really an issue. So you can stream it. It'll be fine on YouTube. You might get a copyright claim. On Facebook, what a lot of churches do is they stream the whole service on Facebook and then take it down after 24 hours so that they don't get that copyright strike. And then they replace it with just the message. And the message only obviously doesn't incur any copyright issues.
It's really good. Haley, do you have anything to add there? Justin, do you have anything to add there? If not, we'll move on to another question, but that's a really important one, especially if you're worried about your streams getting cut because of music.
Yeah, Facebook will partially mute the part where you have copyrighted music, but they won't take the whole video down. But you also can't boost it if it's partially muted. So that's something to consider. Mostly we find that if that happens at Bayside, it's because we were streaming with music that was playing inside the worship center before or after service, and then our whole thing gets flagged, but they'll partially mute the portion with the music that was copyrighted. So if you're not meeting, you're not streaming music inside the house, it should be a non-issue. So you shouldn't be playing that then on your new live streams.
I would just add, and this is probably the hot take here, but I don't want to discount worship as part of the experience and everything, and it's very, very valuable. But when it comes down to it, maybe consider just not even including that in the stream, or doing it separately somehow, or finding a different way to get that content out, or finding a way for people to just do that in person in smaller groups and just focus on the message that you're putting out. Particularly, I just want to say for the smaller to medium-sized churches who feel all this pressure, don't feel the pressure of having to put your music in the stream if it's going to complicate things.
Yeah, a good solution to that, Justin, to pick up on your point and just bounce off that. Churches can create playlists on Spotify.
Yep.
And then send that out on social media so people and just listen to the playlist that would have been played in church, just played by the actual artist. So there are creative ways to get around it. And so just leveraging that as a potential solution instead of trying to figure out how to do worship and live stream it without any copyright issues, just create a Spotify playlist or something along those lines, post that, and then just worry about the message content. I would agree with Justin on that.
That's great advice.
That is such a great idea when it comes to the Spotify. I know a lot of churches and worship leaders want to still participate, and so you've got to wrestle with that. I get it, and you might have to try things. If Dave or somebody in the live stream answer box could answer Matt's question or Matthew's question, that would be awesome. Someone asked about Zoom or Google Hangouts. That was Matt Moore asked, should we utilize formats like Zoom calls or Google Hangouts for small groups? That is an awesome question. I know from personal, understanding, I haven't tried it yet, but Zoom does allow you to create breakouts. And I know Zoom is a great product, even though we had technical difficulties with Zoom talking to YouTube today. Zoom is still a very, very powerful platform. Anybody, Justin, Dave, or Haley, experience with Zoom? Have you guys tried? What are you going to do for small groups at your churches?
There's actually a meeting about that right now. So I'm about to hear what we're going to do, but I think they're mostly going to publish a study, a live video study on YouTube. That's my recommendation. I think they're wanting to stream through Church Online, which I kind of would like to keep the streams a little bit more separate. But you can encourage small groups to meet on like Facebook chat, Messenger. Instagram has a chat feature too that you can add a bunch of users to. WhatsApp. Pretty much any social platform now, you can do some form of multimedia messaging. You can do FaceTime phone calls with a ton of people. The number of options out there are pretty much unlimited. So I would just make a form recommending like where small groups can go and let the small group decide on their own where they would like to gather together. But for the purpose of giving them content, I would just pick a platform and make that very clear. Clear call to actions are always best. You don't need to be in all places for all people. Just say like, hey, we're going to do it on our Bayside Church app. Everybody go to the app for that content. So if you just have one clear call to action, people will know where to go a little bit easier. And we don't need to try to figure out, people have enough to figure out right now. So they don't need to figure out where to find your church content. Just make it clear and give them a clear call to action.
Before Dave jumps in here, because I'm sure he has some
completely
thoughts.
agree. There's so many different options that we can leverage technologically, which is awesome. But I would also be encouraging people, leverage things like the YouVersion app to do reading plans together as a church. If you're in a larger church, over 400, and say you've got a handful of small groups, get the small group leaders just to, hey, go and pick a YouVersion reading plan, invite your group to come and read it with you, and do it that way, and then leverage the tools that Haley just talked about to, see each other face to face and connect and talk about the things that you've read.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, someone just Jared just commented about the use of Facebook groups. We have a mutual friend, Nona Jones. She's at Facebook, head of faith partnerships at Facebook. We'll share a resource with you in this thread. Facebook groups, in general, are a great option for especially smaller churches. My wife teaches at a Christian school, and we opened up a Facebook group recently. I think I said group this whole time. I don't know if I said page, but I meant to say group. Opened a Facebook group to have those inside conversations that came alive, and people just organically started posting relevant things. Now you have to be careful. Some people might start posting about their lawn care service or things that they offer, and it can get a little bit messy. But Facebook groups, Dave, actually Justin, anything on Facebook groups for a small church?
I think Facebook groups are great, particularly for community groups, particularly around specific needs. Create as many groups as you can, and they're pretty easy to manage. I think in general, when it comes to meeting in smaller groups or doing community groups at home, there's so many resources out there through Facebook, through YouVersion, through your own website. I agree. I think the best solution here is to create content and resources for your people, and just empower them to go out and do this themselves. If you need to create a Zoom account and put that out there, great. There's Skype. There's a number of different ways that you can do it for free. Google Hangouts, online. But give them those resources. Create a quick PDF on how to do it. Create a curriculum video that they can go through together, or quick little devotional type messages from your pastor. Utilize your website and have all that available to them, and then encourage them to create a Facebook group for other people. They can go live in that group even together. There's just no reason why people can't be doing this right now, and no reason why we shouldn't have been doing it all along.
Yeah, I just saw.
And sorry, Clark, I just want to jump onto what Justin said, because I think it's really important. The other tool that I would recommend is, especially for smaller churches that might have the capacity to do this, is leverage your phone. Like, pastors, text out to your congregation, your community, text out what you're reading scripturally, and then get feedback from them and have those sorts of conversations. This in many ways is the most intimate thing we have, right? We all carry the Bible around in our pockets. We're all able to connect to the World Wide Web and to any content from any church, from any pastor, anywhere in the world, simply by carrying a church around in our pocket. So I would be encouraging the smaller churches especially, start leveraging this and start doing it via text, because text is way more intimate, I think. When it comes to technology, texting is the most intimate thing. It is the really the personal stuff. So if you're in a smaller church and you're wondering, how am I going to do this? If you're pastoring a smaller church, you're wondering, how am I going to keep my community connected? Text them. Keep texting them. Create a group text chat or something along those lines, and just start texting them.
Yeah. One of the comments that's great, Dave. It's really great. But everybody, very thankful for your input so far. One of the questions was about Children's Church Online, and I wanted to throw something your way that I hadn't planned to talk about. It just hit me what we're doing at home, what we just did this past Sunday. So some churches don't have the capacity to do the main service and children's service and youth service. Like, how do you get all of that online? And if your church is at a size or capacity level where you can't deliver all of that information through a stream, it's too much right now. I am not getting paid in any stretch of the imagination to share any information, including what I'm about to share, but I would highly recommend you check out the Life Church Apple TV app. Something we do every night almost at our home before this. And then I found on Sunday morning while we were streaming, watching our church, our kids were not, my 4-year-old especially was not connecting. The 8-year-old was trying to. What we did is we ended up quickly putting them in the room right next to us. That sounds weird, I know, but we turned on the Life Church app, and there's 2 There's all kinds of different ministries involved, but there is a middle school, an elementary, a pre-K, and we had them watch a Bible story together while our pastor was speaking. And it was the dynamic and the philosophy behind all that. We won't get into all that today, but it was absolutely incredible to remember the resource that Life Even Church, like Life Church, offers, that you can play. We do that actually every night with our children at home. We actually watch the Life Church app almost every night it's on Apple TV. Maybe we'll put a link in there. But that's just an idea. If your church can't do multiple services, children's, adult, and middle school, high school, that could be something you do. Dave.
Yeah, that's great, Clark. I really appreciate you saying that. They have the Kids Bible on your phone app as well. And then there's things like, there's tools like the Bible Project.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be so suitable for middle school to high schoolers, and have them watch some of the incredible content that the Bible Project puts out. So there are things out there. We just need to have somebody who's collecting them all together, and distributing them so that it gets out to more and more people.
I think we should maybe come up with a list of things like that we can share. We also just put in the thread the Life Church, life.church/kids/media. Haley, Justin, do you guys have any practical resources, things online that even maybe your church, Haley at Bayside, that they could take advantage of from their homes, or maybe their church could share as a resource?
We have a private Facebook group for pastors and ministry leaders that's set up on our main Bayside Church Facebook group that we're going to be loading with resources for church leaders. That's a great place to go. But what we haven't mentioned yet, which I don't know why, is the giving piece that so many pastors are worried about not getting by not being in the house. And I know that was a main concern at Bayside, is how are we going to leverage this? And I would not recommend Facebook groups to stream to, because there's no giving feature there. Even Facebook Live, like, you can throw a link in the comments, but that's only good if people have comments enabled. Church Online platform, like I said, is free. And there is a big old give button, like you can put it on the top, you can put a button with a banner below on the stream, which is what we did part of the time. And we also had the other button. And I was hosting the stream and also throwing it in there. And we barely saw a dip in giving this weekend. And I attribute it all to that online platform, for it being easy for people to do while they're watching service. So if you guys haven't even considered church giving, hopefully you have a solution on your website where people can give online there, and then you would just take that link and throw it into the Church Online site, and people can easily give there. That's the only reason why I would recommend it over live streaming to all the other locations. I think those are great too. You want people to get the content ultimately, but you don't want them to stop being generous and faithful tithers to help keep your ministries running.
Yeah, that's such a good point, Haley. I'm glad you brought it up, and I'm glad we're talking about that now, because you're right. There is that is such a big concern. But again, to the point that you made earlier, this is the sort of thing that, as the capital C Church, we've got so many tools that we should have had this figured out a long time ago, right? Like, our church, we're lucky enough to have an app where people can give, and we've been communicating the idea of online giving for the longest time now, for several years, to the point where we don't even pass a collection plate around anymore, because this is a collection plate now. And so I would be encouraging churches to leverage this time. If you haven't already set up online giving and start communicating online giving, it's such a great and easy way for people to give to your church. So you leverage this time now to start. And there's all sorts of resources you can use. I know Justin would probably know more than I, but Tithe is one giving app, and there's a whole bunch of other ones out there. So start leveraging those now, so that if this prolongs any further, or something else comes along where you have to close the doors again, you're set up for it. You're future-proofing your church.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I think I'm seeing a lot of small churches who, they don't have a digital giving in place already, trying to, they're freaking out, trying to figure it out. And there's a number of options out there. I mean, I don't think it really matters who you go with. They're all pretty easy to set up. I think Tidely is the easiest to set up. Within a couple of minutes, you actually get a link that you can send out, or you could even just use PayPal or whatever if you had to. But it's so easy to get set up with a way to accept money, have it connect to your bank account. Just grab that link and don't be afraid to share that out on your feeds. Don't be afraid to put it up as a lower third. Like, we need to be expressing what the needs are right now, not only for our church to stay alive, but also for our church to be able to meet the other needs that are out there. Giving is an act of worship. It's commanded. It's something that we need to be teaching through as well. And so make it available. Don't be afraid to share that. But if you're not meeting in person, you will see a dive in giving if you don't already have these online things in place. So get it set up now and email it out to your full list. Put it on all of your social media. Don't be afraid to share it.
Mm-hmm.
That is an interesting transition point from giving to communication via things other than social media. And we're going to get to Easter in just a second, but let's talk about other than social media, email, app, website, phone, text. Let's not get too deep into the weeds, maybe some practical stories or examples of churches you've seen either using text or email or some kind of push notification. Probably a lot of the churches that are watching don't have an app, but what have you seen out there, and why should we be using other forms of communication maybe that's been on the shelf and it's getting a little dusty?
I think right now texting is huge. If you don't have it set up already, you can easily sign up for like Text in Church or a number of the community, number of different services like that. But right now I'm still getting 10, 20 emails a day from every service out there possible, every restaurant. Everybody wants to share what their COVID-19 response is, even if it's just completely irrelevant. And there's just so much noise in our inboxes that are all using the same hashtags and keywords. And so when your church sends out, here's our response, here's what we're doing to COVID-19, super easy to just overlook that. But if you get a text message, you're going to check it for one. Nobody likes that little red dot. And you're going to be able to see that really quickly if your church is able to send that out to your congregation to say, hey, here's what we're doing with live streaming, or here's how to give, or here's some needs that you can meet, whatever you want to communicate. Super easy to do that. If you don't already have everyone's numbers, then you'll have to promote that on social media in order to get it. But you can easily pull that from your database, wherever you have it, and plug it into a service like Text in Church and get that out there. But I think that's going to be your most effective way to communicate needs if you do it sparingly and do it well.
So let's throw a couple products out there real quick that we're aware of. Text in Church. I think Planning Center might have a feature in there. You've got just MailChimp. Anything else from anybody on suggestions on platforms to email and to text people?
You can get a Google phone number pretty easily for free as well. That's a good way to set something like that up. If you're a larger church with more resources, there's certain apps like Superphone and Community, which do texting in a really great way. Those two platforms specifically, Superphone and Community, are more like a MailChimp for texting. You're able to mass text out to people, and it appears in their iMessage or their texting app as a personal message to them. So there's some resources that require a little bit more, they cost a little bit more. But even just a Google phone number, you get that for free, and you can start texting out straight away from that.
Mm-hmm.
Haley or Justin, any more thoughts on email or texting?
I think with email, like, now's the time, especially if you're just sitting at home, self-quarantine at home, or your church office is closed. Start thinking about the content that you can put out that can be helpful. I've seen a number of things go around, like, here's 25 things to do at home with your kids now that you're stuck with them and schools are closed. Here's homeschooling tips, because if your school is closed, chances are they've provided some kind of online service for you. So turn those into quick little PDFs or resources or whatever, and get that out to your email list, get that out to your text message list, and put it out on social media. Be the church providing those resources during this time. We should be able to see content like that come out from the church, and that's the type of stuff that you should be filling our email.
Justin, I think that is an absolutely huge point to make for everyone. Is we've got to think beyond Sunday at this point, because you're not getting the full experience. Even if it's online, you're not getting the full experience. So how can we be further into the lives and the conversations in meaningful ways throughout the week? And I think giving some suggested, like you just said, a PDF or 5 things you could do at night, how to have a conversation with your child, your son or daughter, about coronavirus. I've seen some resources out there coming from like the therapy world. What if the church could learn from the therapy world and say, hey, let's give you some conversations to have with your children, with your family. If we as a church could be thinking in ways like that, I mean, just imagine what we're going to learn and what we could do after this pandemic is over. So huge point.
Again, we should have been doing this already. That's
Absolutely.
why it's so hard not to be frustrated at the church, because it's like, man, none of us here are saying anything new.
Yeah, I agree, Justin. It's hard to be frustrated, right? Because the church always talks about, you hear it in the capital C church all the time. Oh, the church is more than just a building. Yet when the building closes, we realize that it has been about the building. Yeah. And we make everything just about Sunday. We're not followers of Jesus just on Sundays. We're followers of Jesus every single day. And so this is the sort of time where I think content needs to be coming out of our churches more than ever, because we're forced to look beyond just Sunday. Monday's coming, Tuesday's coming, Wednesday's coming. How are we leveraging technology to grow people in their faith and to grow our churches and keep them connected at this time? You guys have heard me say this before. The Apostle Paul used the technology of his day to connect people with God and to grow the church. Technology of his day was letter writing. We need to be doing the same. The technology of our day is iPhones, it's Androids, it's apps, it's YouTube, it's Facebook, social media. Let's be leveraging those. Pastors, use your Instagram feed to teach Bible devotions. Give content out on a regular basis. Go live on Instagram Live and just pray for people in your congregation. Use your text on your phone to let people know you're thinking about them, to mobilize people to serve in the community as best as they can. Like, this is an opportunity we have to springboard from this into a new future of doing church. And I just really want to encourage us all, do whatever we can to change up the way, stop viewing church in the way that we've always viewed it. That sort of church, I'm not saying it's over, but we can't function in that capacity anymore. Let's start leveraging all the tools we have at our disposal that I 100% believe God has put at our disposal to use, and do what the Apostle Paul did, leverage the technology of our day to connect people with God, to serve in the community, and to grow people in their faith.
Come on. I want to echo what Dave is saying. I think our traditional media of emails and texting is great, but it's kind of like a stage announcement. It's like halfway effective for people that we already have. So why wouldn't we use our social media channels and all the technology at our disposal, like Dave is saying, and then like Justin is saying, put out like amazing content for what real people are dealing with, not what we think they're dealing with. And so like at Bayside, we're going to shoot a special video probably tomorrow. I was trying to push it to Wednesday, but we all might be on a global lockdown by then. Don't mean to scare you. We're going to put out a special video on teaching kids like what social distancing means and how to talk to them about that, and the coronavirus, a resource for parents. But let's not stop talking about God. We don't need to have it all focused around the coronavirus. I think that's what Satan wants. He wants our focus away from God and to be scared. And it's funny, like I've heard a lot of churches saying like, let this be about faith and not fear. But every single church jumped on an online stream this weekend because they were afraid of what a weekend outside of their 4 walls would look like. So we did move by fear, but let's start moving more by faith and keep the main thing, and stop making coronavirus the main thing. We can talk about it without saying coronavirus. And I think everyone would be very pleased, because I'm so tired of hearing about it, to be honest. So let's find more creative ways to communicate, but again, like keep it clear and concise and just give your people easy action steps.
Amen. I think the biggest takeaway we can take from this is like, I do not want to see churches who are just hunkering down. The pastor's like, great, I got some time off, I'm going to stay at home. We don't have to put out as much content. The communications people are all relieved because they don't have to work on the bulletin this week. Like, heck no. if anything, like there is so much more work to do now that you have all this time to devote to the things that actually matter. And so I hope we don't see churches taking a step back, but actually take a leap forward and try to figure out ways to put out more content, connect with community in a way that we never have before. I can't help but think of Crosspoint Church in Nashville. They literally lost their building this last week in the tornado. And all the stories I see about them are them actually in the city helping people. Like that campus is 4,000 to 5,000 people. They literally are trying to figure out a way, how do they meet each week? And now they can't meet at all. They're just doing online, but they're still out in the community trying to help other people who were affected with the tornado. And now they're helping people who are affected with coronavirus, affected by that. And it's an amazing example of the church ready to be the church and staying active throughout the week, because it really has nothing to do with Sunday morning.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. 3 sermons back to back to back. It was really good. That's why I was just texting. Let me tell you a quick story about how this came about. I was Sunday morning, like I said, trying to figure out how to help my local church, and I feel like I couldn't help. I used to be on staff at church, and now we serve and help a lot of ministries, but I was trying to figure out how I could help, couldn't find a meaningful way of doing it, so I text Dave and Haley and a couple other friends, including Justin. I said, hey, look, can you guys go tell people what they should be doing, give them some ideas, some practical things that you're seeing in other churches? And that's why we're here today, is these 3 individuals and many, many more, and we might do more of these, who knows. They care deeply about the church and what's happening online in such a horrific moment. It's like a movie scene. It's nothing we could have ever dreamed, honestly, and we don't even know what the next couple of weeks and months are going to be like. But I want to take this towards Easter. Speaking of, we don't know what this is going to look like moving forward. And it may be too early, like Haley and Dave in particular, you may not have a plan for Easter rolled out just yet, which is kind of why we are having this live stream, because that's one of the big questions right now. The CDC just recommended, we saw Justin post it last night, that groups less than 50 people or no more than 50 people over the next 8 weeks. That is a significant piece of news for churches, because it goes into Easter. Can we talk about Easter? I know we had some questions on here. Communion, Easter, what are we going to do? Production, should we curate more of a family experience on Easter? Just want to open this up to, let's start with Haley.
Why would you start with me?
Because you're the first person I can think of
right now talking about Easter, and I'm probably going to get in trouble for it. So I think my friend Debbie, or my mentor Debbie, she is an executive pastor at Cornerstone Church in the East Bay area. So they were shut down before a lot of us were. So they just I think of over a couple of days, filmed 4 weeks worth of content of weekend messages and got it all done right away. And so if you can do that within the next 2 days, maybe just go and film an Easter message. And if you want the on-stage look and you want it to be a little more special than a selfie video, a selfie video might be totally sufficient for a different kind of intimate Easter. I think we're in uncharted territory, so it's okay to try different things and see what works for your church. But I would maybe try to urge getting that out as soon as possible before we go into an all-country lockdown, which I think is going to happen the next 2 days, guys.
Dave and Justin?
I think it's probably time. I put out a post and some tweets and stuff when this happened Thursday, and I said, just chill on Easter. Don't make any rash decisions, because everyone's worried about what are we doing for Sunday. But I saw so many churches already saying, oh my gosh, Easter's canceled. And so, pause the brakes on there. But here we are Monday, literally in Georgia, it's illegal to have, a meeting over 250. The CDC is saying over 50. In Washington, they actually dropped the ban to 50. And so it's going to be impossible. And that covers 8 weeks. That's through Easter. So it will be impossible to actually have large gatherings. And I'm seeing churches say, okay, well, how do we divide Sunday into 10 gatherings of 50 then? They're trying to work within those restrictions, and that's just totally missing the point. Like, we need to, at this point, just blow up our Easter plans and start from scratch and kick it into high gear to figure out something new. Like Haley said, this is uncharted territory. We don't have a plan that we can give you that says, hey, here's what to do for Easter if you don't have a building, because we've just never had to experience that before. But there's a number of practical ways you can figure this out. But I think, focusing on small gatherings in the home, making it intimate, forgetting the whole big production of Easter. Like we do big productions for Easter because it helps bring a lot of people into the church who can hear the gospel for the first time. And that's huge, but that's not going to work this time. So we need a new model. How do we get as many people as possible to hear the gospel? How do we make opportunities for people to invite people either into their home or into a live stream or into a Zoom type chat or something like that? Think of ways you can provide those resources with the goal of, hey, as many people as possible need to hear the gospel. And honestly, go out into the city and be the church in the city as well. If you want to divide anything into smaller groups, divide them into groups of 3 or 4 people who actually can go out and meet people and meet those needs and actually express the gospel through providing resources and things that people still need, because the rest of the world isn't going to pause to celebrate Easter. They're still going to be panicking that they don't have a job, that they don't have toilet paper. Like, none of that's going to stop come 4 weeks from now.
Yeah, I think some of this conversation gets up into the leadership structures of our churches, and there's a lot of complexity to it. I just got a message from my wife and someone here in the studio at the same time that the school system here in our area has just announced that they're closed until April 13th. That's 4 weeks now, not 2 weeks. So this is like Haley said, we're in uncharted territories, and the leadership. I just want, I don't know, maybe remind all of us to be praying for that leadership. And I'm not saying we don't have influence, because we probably have a lot more influence now than we ever had before in the digital space. But pray for not only the compassion that we need to have, but the wisdom and the decision making that our leaders are making, that are signing paychecks, that are trying to keep people on staff. I'm so encouraged to hear Haley say that giving was almost exactly the same. But we're up against some incredibly huge challenges. And we might come back to that question about Easter, and maybe we have one more of these between now and Easter. Not sure. I'm not putting you guys on the spot, just a little bit. But there was a question that just came up. Let me see if I can find it here. So this is not technology or digital per se, but this person is asking for creative ideas for community outreach during physical distancing. I'm not a historian, but I do think I remember how much the church grew in Europe over a century ago, because the church stepped into the plague and cared for people who were sick. What does the church do now? While Dave mentioned at the beginning, which is so true, we're loving our communities by staying distant. So how do we serve the shut-ins? My parents are just turned 70. They are trying not to go out anywhere. What do we do, even if it's from technology? Any creative ideas is what this person was asking to address that.
We put out a few different blog posts on this over at sundaymag.tv. I don't mean to plug anything, it's all free. But, we put out a post by Jeff Henderson, who's at Gwinnett Church, part of the North Point team, and he's got some ideas on there. One I loved was the idea of collecting gift cards and giving those out, or even buying gift cards and giving those out. For one, it helps the restaurants and local businesses who are all suffering right now, as long as they're still open. A lot of them are continuing to do, takeout and delivery and things like that. So provide people with gift cards so that they can actually help the economy as well. And then, support your local food bank. I mean, all of these gear around too. Like, it's hard to get groceries right now. If you weren't able to go out and rush out and get groceries and toilet paper and stuff, there's nothing left except for like the health food items, and nobody wants to eat that stuff. So people are dependent on the restaurants, which are now closing, And so finding ways to support your local food bank, giving out gift cards to restaurants, and then honestly just being there for people. Everyone's scared to death right now. And we don't we still don't even really know people who are actually sick with this, or very few of us do. And that might get worse and worse and worse. And so there's going to be those needs as well. But making phone calls and going out and actually meeting with people, or actually doing that through Skype or FaceTime or whatever on your phone, and just being there for people and praying with them and just listening to them and providing them hope. I mean, that's all super easy, low-hanging fruit stuff that we all can be doing, not just from the church.
Something that just came to mind specifically, want Dave and Haley to jump in here, but I just personally went through a season where my grandmother went on to be with the Lord. And one thing that I missed, and I wish I had done more, was the video calls. She didn't have an iPhone, but we were able to do Facebook until later the last couple of months. She had trouble getting to Facebook, but we would do Facebook video with her from the couch. And that is an amazing thing the church could do right now, is maybe use technology to just call and face-to-face with some older people, and not only to check on them, but just to give them encouragement and love and pray for them. When my grandmother lost connectivity with people, you could see a quick drop in her health. And this is going to be a couple weeks, couple months, just crazy to think about how long it could be. We need to be thinking about ways of getting in the lives, especially of the older people in our churches, to love them, show them your kids maybe, have your kids pray with them. Just who knows what your ideas the church might come up with. But Haley and Dave, anything North Point or Bayside is doing to work on this community outreach element right now when we're not supposed to be being around people?
We're definitely trying to mobilize our community to do this. We just did a big City Serve community outreach in September, and then we celebrated at Golden One, where the Sacramento Kings play, on that Sunday after. So we know how to do it. We just don't know what's allowed as far as a mega church dispensing hundreds of people into the community. It has to be at a much more micro level. So we're talking about more neighbor to neighbor outreach and what that could look like, and mobilizing just the small groups to all do individual things. I don't know. It's getting really complicated with what places are closing down and where we can even gather our resources. So it's still all being unfolded in the works. Just like everything else right now, it's all coming in at one time.
Yeah, we're in the same boat. Things are unfolding, and we're just trying to respond as much as we possibly can to people's needs. We are fortunate in that we have a lot of partners that we connect with in the community, organizations that serve the underprivileged, serve local schools, serve the homeless, that sort of thing. And so we're trying to resource them as much as we possibly can, and to promote the work that they're doing. So we're doing that through the people, through those organizations that are already serving the community, and trying to throw as much of our resources behind them as we possibly can.
That's really great. I'm going to give little fudge of my words there. I'm going to give everyone a chance to ask another question or two. Let's put about a 5 to 8 minute window on wrapping here. I think some of the big things we've heard are the giving, the being more. Finally, the church is coming around using technology, and it's tragic, but exciting that this is what's causing that. We're starting to take it seriously, and it's going to be the catalyst maybe in the next couple of months and years to how the church uses technology. If you have any more questions, we'd love to hear those. Anybody else, Dave, Haley, or Justin, do you have anything that's come to mind that you wanted to talk about that you haven't discussed so far in this conversation?
For me, it's just how awesome you are, Clark, for pulling this together. This is such a great resource for the church, such a great resource for ministry. I think probably further than that, it's just such a good resource for people of faith who want to make a difference during this time, and to have some hope, and to know that there are people who are trying to process through some of this stuff. So for me, I just want to thank you, Clark, for pulling us together. This is such a weird group of people to come together from all different. Not weird, just together we're weird, Haley. It's okay. Together we're all weird. But so first of all, I would say that. Second of all, again, just to reiterate what I said before, the church has never been about a building. It's always been a collection of people who are making a difference in the world and living out their faith by following Jesus in the community that they're living in. And so I would just be encouraging us as followers of Jesus to continue to do what he did. He always met the physical needs of people first, right? He would heal somebody's sickness. He would help them draw water out of a well, and then he would start talking about some spiritual stuff. So first and foremost, I think we need to be thinking of people outside of our walls who are hurting, and what can we do? What can we do to meet the physical needs that they have? Even if that's, Haley put something in the chat, which was such a great thing, and I don't want it to just go past in the chat and nobody see it. She said to go around and TP the community, go and find out, hey, does one of your neighbors need a roll of toilet paper and you've got one? Go and take it to them. That's meeting a physical need. And then, then after that, you might say, hey, my church is doing a live stream. Would you want to come and just watch it together? Or can I share this link with you? There's so many ways we can leverage technology, but also loving people in the best way we can while we're social distancing, while we're doing all of that sort of stuff, and being as protective as possible. Anything that we can do to do those, to meet those needs is helpful. I saw a thing on the Today Show today where a personal trainer in Spain got on top of a roof in front of an apartment block and did a whole workout on the roof of this building, and all these people came out onto their balconies and did the workout with him. Like he was leading this entire apartment block with in a fitness session. Then you see stories of all these people coming out in France and clapping for the first responders and for the nurses and doctors and doing this big cheer of applause. You see all these people in Italy who musicians have come out and started playing on their balcony of their apartment so that everybody can get this music coming through and to try to lift hopes and spirits. There are so many things that we can be doing if we think outside of the box. This is such a unique opportunity for the church to lead the charge on some of these things that we may otherwise have never thought about. Just try stuff. Just try whatever you can, whether it's going out on the balcony, whether it's live streaming worship from somebody's lounge room, living room, which is what we did at North Point yesterday. One of our bands got together and just live streamed out of somebody's living room and put it up onto YouTube. Whether it's leading a fitness regime on the top of a building, do whatever you can to serve the people around you. Social distancing, keeping distance physically doesn't mean we have to stop loving the people around us.
Yeah, I want to echo that. Jesus didn't social distance from anyone, and God doesn't social distance from us. And so we are the carriers of his word. And my last point is, if you're going to tell people you're not operating out of the spirit of fear, make sure you look like it, like you're not operating out of spirit of fear. Our presence is really important. We want to be the carriers of hope. And if we want to run around looking like, we don't know what to do, we have no live stream, we can't do this, we can't get to people, waving our arms and wailing around the streets, no one's going to trust anything that we have to say when we do finally get up on those sites. So walk in peace, walk in the spirit that you carry, and creativity always has a problem to solve. So just be solutions oriented in this time and try new things. We don't have all the answers here. We're just leading churches on a larger scale, some of us, and we get to still try things and figure out what works best for our individual communities. And we're just hoping that those few resources we do have to share are helpful to you in this time of need, and that you can go back to your pastor, not wailing your arms, but with a solution in mind, saying hey, I think I have a plan now for us. So that's all for me. Thank you, Clark, for doing this too. That was awesome.
Absolutely. I want to say one thing before I let Justin land the plane. By the way, no credit or praise to me. It started in a text conversation yesterday, and now we're here doing this. Haley brought up one of the most powerful points I can even say, and I can't even say it. She just said it, but I'm going to repeat it. Even the largest churches in America don't have it figured out yet. And so those of you who are in a small church, those of you who are in a medium-sized church, and those of you who are in large churches, I want you to take a deep breath and just know that we have inside of us the eternal hope of Jesus Christ, who's going to help us get through this. Do not be discouraged. Do not think that you don't have all the answers, because the truth is none of us do. I would honestly say, this is my parting word, let's just take it one step at a time. Do what you can with the resources and the energy and the people that you have. Do not try to change the world with technology yet. Just show the world Jesus. And I think Dave said, let's spread love, not coronavirus or something like that. Justin, I'll let you kind of land us here, man.
We should have ended it with that, because that's beautiful. I would think that my last parting words here would be, churches, don't play the victim through this. Like, we're literally all in this together. Yes, it's affecting everything. Yes, you're scared, and giving might go down and things like that. And yes, you're having to disrupt how you've been doing things forever. But you're not the victims in this. You have a chance to actually step up and be the leaders through this. Like, our commandment is to preach the gospel and make disciples. It says nothing in the Bible about having to meet at Sunday and have people come to you. At least I'm pretty sure. I've read most of it. And I just think, this is the way that, for whatever reason, this is how it's happened to disrupt the church in the way that we do things. And that's sad to me, but it's also so very exciting, because it's forcing you to figure this out. And so honestly, my advice as we get through this next 8 weeks, and honestly, I'm getting text messages right now saying that Trump just announced something about how things are not going to change until July, August. I mean, this is going to push through the summer for us. And so honestly, Sunday morning, figuring out how to live stream, that's going to be the least of our worries. Mm-hmm. I don't care if it gets to the point where, hey, churches aren't able to actually put out their message every Sunday. Who cares? That's the last piece of this puzzle. That's the last thing that we should be worrying about doing, because that's super easy to make a video of me reading the Bible and teaching you a lesson. We could do that all day long. I could do the next 6 months of that, knock it out today and put them up somewhere. But getting out there, meeting those needs, figuring out what those needs are, and meeting those needs, that's the most important thing right now. And you have a real opportunity to shine here and not retreat. So I don't know. I don't have a catchy Andy Stanley one-liner that rhymes to end us here. So
okay, I'll take it. I don't have one, but I'll take it. I don't know if you can throw the three of them up on the screen, if possible. If not, it's okay. Justin, Haley, Dave, thank you for doing this. Your friendship to me and the voice that you have in the church. You are the weirdest group that I could have pulled together, maybe, but but some of my dearest friends, and there's so many more. We may do this again. Trump, the White House is recommending avoiding groups of more than 10 people. So let's just see what happens over the next couple of weeks. And I thank you all for your time. It's very valuable. I know your churches need you, so go back and do your work. Thank you right here in Chattanooga, Social U, for providing the studio. They literally just said, hey, I'll tell you this, and we're going to wrap. A local pastor the other day, they set this scene right here for a local pastor to broadcast his sermon right here in Chattanooga yesterday. So Saturday they came in, they made this set for that pastor, and they recorded it and they played it. So that church didn't have cameras. And so that's something you can consider as well. Finding a local videographer who can help you do that if you're a smaller church. That's a great idea. Thank you all. I want to say a prayer real quick as we end. Father, I pray for all the leaders who are watching and that don't know what the next step is to take, that they will, after watching this, consume it and just take a big deep breath and pause and take a step forward, one step at a time in the right direction to serve their church well. Give them the wisdom and the power of the Holy Spirit in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you for watching. We hope to maybe see you again soon. be cautious and be well. Bye-bye.